energy solutions, technologies, fuels, whichever way you refer to it. So for the committee of practice, it's usually co-convened by GAMOS East Africa, Africa Center for Technology Studies, Clean Cooking Association of Kenya, and Kenya Power, and we are supported under the MEX program. So as most of us are aware, the discussions around carbon finance and carbon credits have recently dominated the energy space. And so for us who are stakeholders working in this space, it's important for us to engage in these discussions and also to see which opportunities are there for us to grab to help us transition everyone. So carbon finance is said to have a potential to significantly reduce the upfront cost of cooking technologies. And we've had various studies citing issues around upfront cost being an hindrance to increase adoption. So I think it's really crucial for us to have this discussion today to see how can we leverage on this carbon finance to help us reduce those costs. So from this discussion, we will be able to know from our panelists how true this is, because there are people who have worked in this space and have implemented carbon finance projects. And so we hope that from this discussion, you'll be able to learn a few things and also understand how you can incorporate carbon finance initiatives within your own work. So my name is Sipos Ochieng. I'm a research associate at GAMOS East Africa, supporting the MEX program. And I would like to now proceed and introduce our panelists today. And on this session, I would like our panelists to tell us more about themselves, what the organizations are doing in connection to clean cooking and carbon markets. And so if you are on the call already, please, while introducing yourself, turn on your camera so that our participants are able to see you. I would like to call on Geoffrey. Geoffrey, if you are on the call, please introduce yourself and what you do with the organization. Thank you.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, my name is Geoffrey Kimiti, and I'm a co-founder of PowerPay, also known as Green Innovation Ventures. And we are in the technology space. And our role is mostly in providing digitalization for cooking appliances and making sure that devices can be tracked and energy activity can be monitored, as well as supporting financing through PayGo. So, in brief.
Okay, thank you, Geoffrey, for that introduction. Can we hear from Julius Gaduru from Jambo Capital?
Hello, how are you?
Hello, yes, proceed.
This is Julius. Hello, can you hear me well?
Yes, we can, please.
Awesome, thank you, thank you. Volume. Volume. What did I say at it?
Julius, We will give you a chance to introduce yourself later on. Meredith, are you able to introduce yourself as we wait for Julia?
Yes, definitely. I hope you could all hear me. So I'm Meredith Mudhoni, Head of Electric Finance at Burn. And at Burn, we manufacture and distribute a wide variety of clean cook stoves. We have wood, charcoal, electric, and LPG stoves. And I mainly focus on strategy, financing, and policy for the electric products at Burn. Pleasure to have you all here today.
Thank you, Meredith. Julius?
Yes, how are you? So I'm Julius from Jabo Capital. We are an entrepreneur business. We do clean cook stoves like GCOS that has very high efficiency rate. And also they are very cheap to our clients. So we are located in Thika. Thank you.
Thank you, Julius. Professor Gatembe, if you're here. Professor Gatembe, if you're on the call, please introduce yourself. Okay, so it seems Professor Gatembe has difficulties joining. We are going to look into that and help him join. But so that we don't waste so much time, thank you all for introducing yourself. And before we delve deeper into the discussions within the community, in the discussions around carbon finance, within the community of practice, we have stakeholders who are diverse, and some, for the purposes of this, we would like to start this discussion in a not so technical way, so that we are able to bring everybody along this discussion. So for this first round of discussion, we'd like to talk about basic issues around carbon finance, carbon markets, and then we will proceed to the second session where my colleague, Dr. John Leary, will dive even deeper into the carbon markets discussion. So for this session, as I figure out how I can bring on board Professor Erastus, maybe Meredith, would you like to explain to our audience, our participants today, without using very technical words, what carbon credit is, and what are some of the basic principles of carbon finance in the context of clean cooking?
Yeah, sure, I could go ahead. So when you think of carbon credit, think of it as reducing the amount of emissions that we are producing using burning of energy or different type of fuels. And in the context of clean cooking, the way it does apply, if you look back at lots of our upbringing, for most people, you'd find three stone open fire was the main way that we would prepare meals at home, and still is the way mainly people prepare meals at home currently today. And it is really about moving them up that energy ladder to use more efficient stoves that use less wood to burn or less charcoal to burn, and even maybe to higher tech fuels like electric that uses is a more cleaner source of energy. And a big case, especially if you look at Kenya, where we have our grid being more than 90% renewable in terms of the sources of energy that generate our electricity. So the way we do apply carbon financing to cook stoves is using the emissions that we're reducing. So if you're moving someone from using a charcoal stove to using electric, they're not using charcoal or wood-based biomass in that front to cook. you're saving the environment from a certain amount of emissions, which we call the credits. And based on that, you can be able to use that to subsidize the stove now and pay this investor back much later based on the credits that they able to generate and sell at a future point in time. So in a nutshell, we use it for upfront subsidies. They could also be used to subsidize the fuel, depending on the type of stoves or technology that's applicable at that time or that's been in use. And maybe in case there are any more questions, any specific questions, I'm happy to address them on that front.
Okay, thank you, Meredith, for that basic introduction to what carbon credits are. Our next question is around certification process and how that works. And are there specific standards that are typically used? And what are the steps that if someone who wants to register their projects for carbon credit take? So Julius, are you able to speak to this? Please unmute, Julius. Okay, it seems Julius is having difficulties to unmute. Oh, okay, you're now on. Please go ahead.
I'm okay. Can you hear me well now?
Yes.
Oh, maybe I can just talk a bit about the registration and maybe about the carbon credit. One thing I have realized recently that the Kenyan law has changed. And I think it was gazetted last week on Friday about the whole issue. I'm not actually seeing the gazette notice. What I'm seeing is that what we used to do there earlier, most of the things have changed. And we need really those people who are joining and us who have been there even before, we really needed to move and align ourselves according to the new regulations that the government has put in place. But also talk about it. It's not very hard if you are well actually registered with the government of Kenya to do that business. And also you are also known where you are and the countries that you are. It is not very hard for you to do these things. What one requires to do is thorough or paperwork. It has a lot of paperwork to be done. You have to prepare all the PDDs and the issues therein. But once you have all those issues and then you supply your cook stove, it will be easier for you later. But what I can maybe talk about the people who are joining. One require maybe to be guided by the people who have been there before. It is not really advisable for someone maybe to venture in without being guided by people or the people who are ahead of you, because you may find obstacles ahead or fail to have some of the document, and later on you have issues with the when you are selling your carbon credit or when you want to do that kind of business. But it's a good business. Well, that's what I can say.
Okay, thank you, Julius. I think Professor Erastus has now joined. Okay, it doesn't seem like he's joined yet. Yeah, so Meredith, would you like to also add on to that, being that BAN is also implementing a carbon credit project?
Sorry, Cyprus, could you just come again on the specific question?
All right, so the question was about an elaboration on how the certification process for carbon credit works, if you can give us that. And then what are some of the typical standards that are involved? And also, if someone wanted to register for carbon projects, what are the steps that they need to follow?
Yeah, I think I'll prefer not to comment on that. It's really not my area of expertise on the registration and details on the standards that do follow. But happy to provide an email with more context on that much later after the call.
All right. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you, Meredith. Professor Erastus, you're now on the call. Please introduce yourself.
The senior principal scientist at Kenya Industrial Research and Development. So I'm happy to be here. Let me say that to that.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. So while we were still offline, we started the discussion, and we've had the opportunity to explain to the audience what carbon credits entails and to some of the basic principles of carbon finance in the context of the clean cooking sector. And we were now on the question where we were discussing some of the certification processes for carbon credits and how that works, and also the typical standards that are involved. So if you have any insights on this, please share with us as well.
I have shared with you a small PowerPoint. Can you load it?
Okay, you would like to take us through that?
Yeah, because you have asked me about a question on carbon credit. It's just a small summary. We should help, I think, a lot.
All right, let me just check on it now. Give me a minute.
Okay.
All those standards you're supposed to have them, gold standard, Vera. We don't have any. Those standards that you have now you achieve.
Okay. So let me just share my screen now for people to see what you're talking about. Are you able to see the slides? Oh, okay, it's not coming up yet. Give me a minute. Okay. Are we all able to see it now?
Setbacks are possible.
Yes.
Beyond that is still. For interactions with her.
You can just zoom it.
I don't think that's necessary. Thank you for being.
Okay, I think I'm having difficulty sharing your slide. Let me just try one more time. Okay, so I think I will have to share it on this screen, Professor, because I'm not able to. It's taking a lot of time to download. So which slide do you want me to share with the audience? Are you able to see the slides? Hello?
No, Cyprus. It's not visible on my end.
Oh, okay. Let me try one more time. I don't know what's happening with them. Okay. Yeah, I think now it's downloaded. Let me just share it now. Okay. So you can speak through your slides. Hello, are you able to see it now? Hi, everyone.
Yes, we can see it.
Hi, I can see it.
Okay.
Yeah, the slides are visible.
Okay. Yeah. So, Prof, you can go ahead and tell me which slides you'd like me to show for your explanation.
I am not very confident.
Prof is on mute, maybe. I don't know if he's trying to speak on his end or on mute.
Prof, can you unmute, please?
Yes, can I proceed
Okay.
now?
Yeah, proceed, please. Do you want me to start from the first page or?
The first,
Okay.
go to the first slide, please.
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. fine. I thank you for thank you for giving me the opportunity to present and to be a panelist. I think, and sorry for the technology failing us. I wanted to look at this leveraging on carbon credit, or how we can leverage on this area in terms of looking first at the situation analysis. As you are aware, when it comes to this area of green cooking, one of the things that I don't know who is, I'm repeating myself. Can some people unmute? There's a lot of echo. Cyprus.
Prof, I can also see that it's as if you have joined the two gadgets, two devices. I don't know if the other one is a phone or it could be causing the echo.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you, Prof. Go ahead.
Now I can hear you, but initially I was actually, it was a lot of echo. So I was saying that in terms of this work, or in terms of this kind of leveraging carbon finances to lower the cost of green cooking, I looked at it from a situational analysis, and this situational analysis is looking at what do we have at the moment. As you are aware, and this is based on our current data, about 71% of a Kenyan household use in one way or another, they use wood stove as either primary or secondary cook stove. Of course, there is a lot of stacking, but naturally, that's what we have found as the current data. Of course, you're aware the impact on the environment, what there is, the deforestation, the degradation, the smoke. Of course, this is where we always report in various reports that we lose over 20,000 due to indoor air pollution, among others. There is also the social impact of these issues to do with the greenhouse gases, the climate change per se. And as you are aware, the air quality is one of the areas that has brought about the many diseases, especially the inhalation and absenteeism, if from the work, schools, among others. But more important is how do we go about the carbon financing to lower the cost of these kind of implications. And as you can see, these are some of the things that we normally find ourselves in. This is a very recent picture from as you go to Turkana. This is the kind of work you find after, on your way to Lodwar. There's a lot of charcoal burning, among others. Of course, there's a lot of destruction of the forest. But critically is to look at more so on what is there for us, as a country, as a society. Move to the next step, to the next slide, rather. Kindly move to the next slide. One way of looking up of the technologies, and more so on clean cooking, and have less as a country or as a society, is to see how much do we need to put it factors that we are rooted to on climate change, carbon issues, is based on technology. And since we have seen that most of us use 70% and above use wood-based kind of the clean cooking or kind of energy use, then there is a need to do a bit of a technology upgrade. And as you have seen, this is one of, as I've said, is one of the recent areas we had visited, and we found people doing, for example, what we call the ICS, or improved cook stove. And if you look at them, this is in one of the areas in the country where they are doing larger production, supported by one of our development partners to do, and the UN agency to do this kind of production. Similarly, and the same applies to us. The next picture is on Kildi doing improved cook stove, what we call gas stove. And so these are the kind of technologies that we find ourselves in. So for us to address this one, I looked at it from two angles. One of them is to understand what does the Paris Agreement entails. One thing it entails is Article 6.2, and as you can see, it addresses the voluntary cooperation between among countries and between groups. And one of them is the way, like now, the way we are discussing this aspect. And the structures and the procedures and trying the rule book, that is Article 6.2. Those who have gone through the 6.2, 6.4, among others, you'll find that mitigation outcomes alone are insufficient to achieve the climate target, especially on nationally determined contribution. So for us to approach the carbon market, carbon market must target investment to improve the climate disaster risk reduction, as well as adaptive capacities. And that is where technology comes in our communities, as well as expanding opportunities where it matters, mostly in agriculture, conservation, and land-based interventions. So if you look at that article, it helps us to understand what is all this animal called carbon credit. It is addressed under this article, and that is how I was looking at it. How do we leverage on this? And go to the next one. For you to, based on the Paris Agreement, remember you had the COP28 last year, and some of the things that came up is the implementation of the Paris Agreement, and then, of course, the Kyoto Protocol was retired earlier. And these are some of the things that all of us, especially who are in attendance, we should understand that moving forward, for you to use the carbon credit, there are certain elements that you have to achieve, or you have to understand and be part of. For example, these are the steps that I thought is important, that for any project, whether it is land-based with forest or the agriculture, must meet. And I haven't seen a Gazette notice which redesign the DNA or designated national entity or authority, which basically in our case is normally NEMA, National Environmental Management Authority. But these are the steps that every program, every project that needs to achieve. For example, from project idea note, project design document, PDD, all the way to say, what is done to verify the procedures until where you get issuance of letter of approval or LOA. I would also recommend the team on the participant to look at to look at the grocery of the UNFCCC on some of these, because there's a lot of abbreviations and the implications under that. So in a nutshell, we're looking at the leveraging is how do we manage ourselves? How do we move on with the projects in terms of carbon credit, in terms of financing? You cannot be financed. You cannot get those carbon credit, those finances. You can't sell your carbon if you have not followed certain procedures, and this is some of them. And bearing in mind, once you get that carbon credit, or once you get that money or whatever you are given as credit, you are able now to lower the cost in terms of technology, in terms of what the interventions that you can be able to offer as a country or as an institution or as a private sector. Next. That's all in summary for that question, and sorry for taking a bit of time due to technology.
Yeah, thank you, Professor, for keeping the conversation going and actually answering some of the questions that we had for your panel, and also trying to get deeper into some of the discussions we are going to have in session 2. But yeah, I think it's all good. Before we proceed to the next session, I would like to also ask the panel just to give us some of the ways in which we've been able to benefit from this carbon finance. Sorry? Okay. Yeah, I think maybe you're talking to someone else. All right, apologies on that. Let's proceed. So my question was, beyond the upfront cost of reduction, what are some of the ways in which we've been able to use carbon finance to increase adoption and also to ensure sustainability of use of clean cooking devices, solutions, etc. So Julius, if you'd like to chip in on this, and then Meredith as well.
Can you come back again to me? Just repeat the question.
All right, yeah. So the next question is about beyond the usual upfront cost reduction, what are some of the ways you've been able to utilize carbon finance to ensure increase in adoption? And how have you also been able to sustain use of clean cooking solutions through this channel?
One of the things that we have done as a business is we partner with the communities. When we are doing the cook stuff, we partner with them. We allow them to own up the business. We allow them to own up the whole project, because we realized that when you give, for example, cook stuff for free, they don't actually own up the whole thing. But when you bring them on board, it becomes easier for them. The other issue that we realized as a business is that you don't have to really cook stuff to be too expensive, because once they are very expensive, they will not buy the idea, they will not buy it from you, or in other words, they will not use those cook stuff. So what we have done is that we have come up with a cheaper way of making cook stuff of the high efficiency rate that are recognized by international standards. That's what we are doing currently. The other issue that we have done may be to venture into the community. During our public participation, we try to bring on board people who have actually a say, or people who are recognized by the community as their leaders. For example, here in Kenya, you know about the Nyumba Kumi. We look for the leaders, we talk to them, we allow them to understand. So when they're able to mobilize people and to educate them further. Also, we use the church leaders to educate on our behalf, or to give us a platform so that we are able to educate the people. Once these guys, or once the community understands everything, it becomes easier for us to penetrate and also to be able to give out our cook stuff to them. So that is one of the areas that we have tried to do in the community. The other thing is that we are not able to go very far. We try to start from where we are in Kiambu County and Murang'a counties, even as we continue further. Thank you.
Thank you, Julius. Meredith, would you like to also chip in on that?
Yeah, sure. Well, the main thing is using the carbon financing to subsidize the stove does improve a lot in terms of making it more affordable and accessible on one front. But on the back end, there are also lots of initiatives that we do to make sure that adoption does happen. So as he's mentioned, yes, engaging in the community through, sorry, Cyprus.
Yeah, proceed. I can hear you.
Okay, engaging the community through our agents and teams, just to make sure that they're able to use the electric appliances as efficiently as possible. We've designed apps and groups and communities where people can interact with each other, share recipes, and just learn more about how they can use the devices more effectively over time. So it is something that we also do include and embed within our process to ensure that adoption does happen at a larger extent.
Yeah, thank you for that, Meredith. Geoffrey, could you give us some of the examples of the projects that you've implemented where you've used carbon finance to enable lower the cost of technologies, and if there are any challenges that you've faced while doing this?
Thanks, Cyprus. Well, I would say that we are still in the process of trying to get something certified, but it's there in the market. So what we are actually working on is trying to get our distributors who are using our IoT to be able to easily get data across to carbon asset developers, so that we can aggregate small projects together for them. So one of the challenges we are trying to address is the fact that there are a lot of small distributors who do not have a lot of muscle to develop projects. They also are not able to sell very big numbers on their own. So that's one of the things we are working on currently to try and address that with a particular carbon developer. So hopefully that is something we hope to be able to bring to the market at the time, when it is a success. But I think the key thing for us is bridging the gap between transparency in terms of utilization of the cookers, in terms of power consumption, and being able to sort of bridge the gap between distribution companies and the carbon market using data.
Yeah, thank you, Geoffrey, for that elaborate answer. Meredith, would you like to highlight some of the challenges you've experienced while trying to implement your initiatives around carbon projects as well?
Yeah, sure. So some of the challenges that I could speak to is a lot around perceptions, especially considering that we are pushing an electric device that many people perceive to be costly and expensive. Though, as mentioned by Geoffrey, with the IoT capability, we're able to demonstrate coin by coin how much you really spent on this meal vis-a-vis if you are using your previous stove to cook on that specific meal. But that's something that just takes lots of time and awareness and initiative to be able to change. And other than that is just making sure we're able to reach as many households as possible across the board, because it is a bit limiting, especially in other regions where this is an urban only solution, just because of the reliability of the grid. And anytime we have issues with electricity, it does dampen the efforts of promoting electric cooking. And because people would always ask, I didn't have power for 8 hours yesterday, so why would I consider this device? So there's lots to do around also on the front in making sure with working with utilities and who distribute the power, that they're able to keep up with the demand needs and provide reliable supplies, just to make sure that we're able to drive the agenda.
Yeah, thank you, Meredith, for sharing that. And thank you all for also giving your perspective on the various questions, and also giving us like a basic overview what carbon credits are and what the Article 6 entails. Thank you, Professor, for sharing that as well. So we are going to proceed to the next session where we're going to delve deeper on the more technical aspects of carbon finance. And so I would like to welcome my colleague John to lead us on that session. John, please take it over.
John, you're muted.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, let's start again. Sorry, it seems a stream of technical difficulties are plaguing us this time, but thank you to everyone who has persevered to this point in the session. So yeah, my name is John Leary, Senior Researcher with the Modern Energy Cooking Services Programme and a colleague of Cypros and Beryl here at Gelmos East Africa. So I want to kind of change gear a little bit and focus in specifically on the opportunities for electric cooking. We've talked a bit about the background for carbon finance to try and bring everyone up to the same level, so we have a basic understanding of how do carbon markets work, etc. How can they be utilized to finance clean cooking projects? So I'd like to ask a few specific questions around electric cooking. I'm cognizant of the fact that we have a few questions coming in on the chat here. I would like to ask anyone else who has any thoughts as we're going through the discussion to please share them on there as well. I'm just going to pause before I go into the other questions and just ask a couple of the questions from Rocio, because I think they are very relevant to all of the cooking technologies. So Rocio has asked if anyone has any examples of the quantity of funding that has been able to be channeled towards reducing the upfront cost of the cooking devices themselves, kind of seeking clarity on whether it's just a small discount of a few dollars here or there, or is this something that can really break down the majority of the cost or even all of the cost of a cooking appliance. Is there anyone on the panel who would like to take that?
Yeah, I could comment on that. That's a good question. So really, in terms of the cost we pass, in terms of subsidy that is passed on, does depend investor to investor, but you'd find it's about 30 to 50% of the cost of the appliance is subsidized through carbon financing. Different technologies use it in different ways, but what we've seen from BAN's experience across all appliances, it is around that level.
Great, thank you. And does anyone else from the panel want to come in? I'm also conscious of the fact that we have many very experienced carbon finance experts on the call here. So if anyone who is not on the panel would like to put their hand up and come in and answer any of these questions, then please feel free to do so, and we would very much welcome your input. So anyone else want to share around the percentage of discount that they're able to offer customers through carbon revenues? Julius.
Yes, what we did, we invested first and allowed our people to give something small out of it. And as also we invested amount of money so that we make our cook stove cheaper for mass people to be able to afford those cook stove. So they were giving a few percentage of a certain percentage. And also we bridged the gap, because the issue of carbon credit payment will come much later after you are through with giving the cook stove and also doing all the paperwork so that you are able now to get the carbon credit. So the best way that we found ourselves doing is allow ourselves to allow the people or the community also to chip in. So when we come on board, both of us, we are able now to reach out to many people. So that's what we did.
Yeah, I totally agree with your point about making sure that it's not completely discounting the cost of the appliance or the cooking device, i.e. that the community the users are contributing something towards the cost. Could you give us an indication of roughly what was the starting cost of the cooking devices that you were selling through this program, and how much of that cost were you able to mitigate through the use of carbon finance? Just a rough indication.
So one, as we are giving the not e-cooking, they were just liners for firewoods. So they were ceramic liners that are not very expensive. So they are coming at around is it $2-3 per one liner. So they would contribute maybe $1 and us also give $2. Then because we need really to mount them back in their home, we transfer technology to the community on how they are supposed to install and to use those cookstoves. And most of the people actually embraced the idea because they were involved in everything. One, is affordable. Two, because of the transfer of technology, everybody could identify the cookstove. So it was very easy for us to reach out to many.
Fantastic. Thank you for clarifying that. It seems like a similar kind of percentage to what Meredith was suggesting, around half the upfront cost of the cooking device. Does anyone else want to weigh in on that with a different solution that they're more familiar with, whether electric or not?
Okay.
Okay, let's roll on for now then. So let me come to some of the questions that are specifically about the new. Oh, I see Prof has put his hand up. Prof Orestes, do you want to come in?
I want to come in. Let me say that when it comes to the technology, I think and the referaging, one of the challenges we have found as an institution, as a government agency responsible for testing and the like, is the cost of the cookstove are quite high, and the technology is also a bit rudimentary. There's a bit of rudimentary in terms of technology. So for the players or the innovators or the owners of the technology, especially the green cookstoves, I think they have a role to improve the quality of the technology, especially to enable them appealing, as well as to address the issues at hand. Because moving forward, there will be a lot of verification, and one way of verification is testing what you are claiming that you are in, because the technology of the cook stoves must meet a certain level. It doesn't have to be like you are moving from a tier 1 or a tier 0, from a 3-stone to tier 2 to tier 3. Then I think that way, with this kind of experience in terms of what need to be done, my appeal is let there be a bit of looking at how do you use the carbon credit or the financing to make the technology cheaper and efficient, because that has been a gap. And bearing in mind what I presented, we need there will be verification. The Veritas must come in so as you can ascertain that, bearing in mind that we have there is something we are addressing. We are addressing the climate change mitigation through green cooking. Over back to you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think you brought up one of the key challenges within the carbon finance industry more generally that has become particularly topical in the last year around the verification. So are the mitigation outcomes that are reported by the project developers matching up with the actual amount of carbon dioxide emissions that are prevented from being emitted into the atmosphere? So I think testing of the efficiency of the cooking device itself is a really important element of that. And the other element, of course, is how does it perform once it's outside of the laboratory environment and in people's homes. So this is one of the key areas where I think there is a big difference between electric and other cooking fuels, where you do have the ability to be able to monitor using smart metering the real usage of the device once it goes out into the field. So maybe it was a very efficient stove when it was tested in the lab, but you have a question mark over how often it's used and whether the efficiency in the lab translates into a similar efficiency when it's used with real cooking practices, cooking real foods in real homes. So I think there's a lot of exciting new opportunities that are opening up, particularly in electric, but also in some of the other fuel sectors as well, where metering is a large part of the evolving delivery models that are used by companies in that sector. So I wanted to ask a question, perhaps focusing more on Jeffrey and potentially Meredith as well, around whether there's any other differences that you see between electric and other clean cooking fuels in the context of carbon, as two organizations that have pushed very heavily towards electric and are developing innovative new business models around some of these new challenges and opportunities. So maybe Jeffrey, could I come to you first, and then perhaps we can bounce over to Meredith afterwards.
Yeah, so a lot of the companies that have approached us for IoT-based monitoring, definitely for a lot of them, the challenge they are looking to address is the ability to collect credible data, so that they can be able to make sure that whatever they are providing to the carbon financier is credible enough. So I guess that's the main challenge that we see that is easy to address with electric. We are also looking at how we could, help other people within the cooking space to sort of come up with solutions that are smart for monitoring. But I'd say those are still, in the works. But I guess that is one of the main challenges, is the fact that you need to be able to get data that you can bank on, that is not an estimate. You're not interviewing somebody after a month or two and they've forgotten whether they cooked 3 times or 4 times and they're not sure. So we see the value of providing very credible metrics, but even to say that there's an opportunity to bring in the impact side of it, so that you can actually be able to verify how many times somebody cooks, how many hours they have done so. So I think that provides an opportunity to actually sell high value carbon credits, so to say, because you are able to provide much better quality data that now is a reflection of the impact that you are seeing in the life of the person, cost savings that can be very exact. So those are things that we are seeing as opportunities to enhance carbon, the carbon credit market. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jeffrey. I think you used a couple of very important words there in terms of data that you can bank on. And I think that's one area where PowerPay really comes in very strongly in being able to enable appliance distributors who are selling conventional appliances using conventional delivery models to be able to digitalize their products and to be able to utilize that data to connect with financiers who can then help break down that upfront cost barrier further and act as an intermediary until financing from carbon can come in. Because I think one of the major challenges that people in the sector have cited is the fact that carbon finance isn't something that you get upfront. It's something that you get after you've proved that you have mitigated a certain amount of emissions. So there's often a need for bridging finance that can enable you to buy an appliance, give it to a customer, get money back in small installments from them, and then in the meantime go and do all of this paperwork or send all this data to a carbon verification agency and then sell those mitigation outcomes on the market and eventually get paid back for all of that investment that you made up front. So I really see that as a strong role for digitalization within the electric side. Meredith, could I come to you? And are there any other advantages or challenges that you see in electric as a company who has used a variety of different technologies and more recently has added electric into its arsenal of clean cooking solutions?
Yeah, sure. So maybe speaking to the advantages. So Geoffrey did point out one, it does improve the integrity of the carbon credits that we are demonstrating to provide, because there's actual data to back that rather than an auditing process. And on the other front, one advantage as well is to give visibility to the end consumers on how much they are consuming. So it's hard to tell, especially if your electricity bill is lumped in one, how much was really used for cooking. So the IoT and the smart metering helps give that perspective back to them. And of course, also making the device more affordable. So without that, we'll not be able to have the pay-as-you-cook mechanism that we have for electric appliances at Bren, where you don't have to pay the full upfront cost. Other than just even it being subsidized already by carbon financing, it's even more affordable now because you don't have to pay fully upfront of that subsidized price, but you could pay it slowly over time. So without that component, that's something else we're also able to provide, and it does widen the market scope of households that we can be able to reach with such a solution. That's what I could add for now. Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. Yeah, so that combination of pay as you cook and then carbon revenue can combine to offer a solution which can break down what is essentially quite an expensive cooking device for many people into something that can become affordable. And in some cases, we're now starting to see some innovative pilots where carbon revenue can be channeled directly back to users as it comes in. So we have an experiment that is coming up that is looking at giving money back to consumers as they cook in proportion to the amount of electricity they use to cook with. There have been previous pilots done in other countries by a company called ATEC with a concept called Cook to Earn that utilize carbon revenue to carry out a similar system like this, i.e. You cook, the amount of energy that you use for cooking in a week is added up, and a rebate is given to you as a mobile money transfer. It's a very innovative new system and very difficult to set up, but potentially it answers Rosia's question earlier in the chat, which was around how can we incentivize customers to actually continue to use an appliance, not just to be able to access an appliance at an affordable price, but to be able to be rewarded for continuing to use that appliance. And what we see in that kind of situation is a very virtuous circle, whereby the more the user cooks with the appliance, the more carbon credits are generated, the more carbon revenue the company gets. And ultimately, if the company is able to channel some of that revenue back to the user, the more they will cook with it, etc., etc. So these kind of systems, I think, are really innovative and can enable us to reach beyond simple adoption, which is where many clean cooking interventions have finished, and to really ensure that we are facilitating the sustained use of clean cooking devices. I think another key innovation that we've seen in this sector is the development of new methodologies. So here at MEX, then we were able to work alongside colleagues at Climate Care and now Climate Impact Partners, and I think Tim is on the line. Certainly was earlier in the call. Him and his colleague Tom Owino were very instrumental in doing the initial engagement with the Gold Standard, who are one of these certification agencies, to be able to develop a new methodology which enables you to use this data that is gathered from appliances that have smart meters in them, to be able to send it directly to the verification agencies and say, this is the evidence of how often this cooking device was used, and using calculations based upon the baseline fuel mix, etc., and the conversion between those fuels and the consumption of electricity. That data can then be used to prove the actual usage of the device and the actual amount of carbon that has been mitigated. I think one of the big challenges that we've seen in the sector recently has been around the verifiability of credits, which has meant that we've seen the price of carbon credits go down quite significantly. And one of the innovations within the sector, which is helping to ensure higher integrity credits, which is one of the other keywords that I wanted to pick up on from what Jeffrey was saying is being able to have this data that says we know that this cook used this cook stove in this way at this time, etc. And this is how that translates to carbon mitigation. So I wanted to move on into policy. So I wanted to ask a question which can perhaps cut across, and I would welcome also feedback from any of those in the audience around how we can facilitate the development of an enabling policy framework that can facilitate the responsible use of carbon finance to drive forward electric cooking adoption in Kenya. I think many people I think carbon finance tends to elicit two different reactions in people. One reaction is a reaction of fear from people that don't understand it, and I would consider myself in that group, especially several months ago. I've learned a lot in the past few months, but I'm still by no means an expert. And the other is of excitement. I think many people look to carbon finance as a key way of being able to bring in the financing that is needed to drive forward adoption within the clean cooking sector. But it is a very complex topic, and there are many moving parts here, and policy environment is one of those. We have the carbon market regulations, which were put out for review last year. They caused a lot of controversy and now being revised. And I think, Julius, you mentioned that the updated regulations have just been gazetted again. So it'd be interesting to hear from people what are the challenges and opportunities that these carbon market regulations have presented. And then the other topic I wanted to touch on is around the national electric cooking strategy, which is also currently out for review at the moment. It has a section on carbon markets and particularly around a carbon financing pilot. But I think at the time that was drafted, then there weren't really any electric cooking carbon projects happening. Between then and now, then several companies have now registered carbon projects, and there are now several pilots underway. So the key question is, what can these policy documents, in particular the electric cooking strategy, where we have the opportunity to be able to influence directly as the conveners of the process, what should this document say? How can we create the right kind of enabling environment where high integrity projects that generate real benefits across the value chain can flourish and can drive forward the adoption of electric cooking technologies? So that was a very long question. Who is brave enough to take a first stab at that one? Meredith, is there anything you might want to say about the electric cooking strategy? What would you like it to say in order to make Bern's life easier?
Okay, I could go first. Yeah, so just reading through the strategy, I think it can speak more towards enabling policies that can drive e-cooking in Kenya. I know it has touched on it in brief and given some pointers of policies that should be considered, but if you could just speak more directly to how that could, the impact of implementing that policy per se. So I did see some mention on e-cooking tariff, but the impact of that has not been captured. Some policies around VAT exemption or incentives for efficient electric appliances, but also in terms of the impact on that to the environment, to livelihoods has not been captured. Because one thing that we need to also think of on a larger scale is electric cooking, yes, is rather than just the carbon emissions, it's also the benefits on people's health, people's well-being, and the savings it will give to households, and especially to women and children and girls rather, because of the time they usually spend on cooking. So if you could be able to amplify the impacts of certain policy initiatives, I think it will give a stronger argument as we continue to interact with the regulators and the Ministry of Energy on these particular topics, to be able to drive them forward to happen much sooner rather than waiting 3 or 4 years for a tariff review to happen.
Absolutely, thank
Yeah,
you. And yeah, it does. Sorry, Jeffrey, do you want to come in? You go first.
Yeah, maybe I could add that for us, I believe when I look at the strategy, one of the things I see missing is funding, especially for local companies. I believe that within the clean cooking space, there's a lot of players who are pretty, I'd say, micro level players with a lot of potential. And I think there's need for some innovative financing in there to support local companies to grow. One of the challenges, as you know, when you're looking for capital, when you're young, is people are looking at your balance sheet. And the first reaction is, yeah, your balance sheet is too small. The commercial banks won't give you money. You go to look for money outside, people have ticket sizes that are pretty large. So still your balance sheet comes into play. And so I believe there is need for innovative financing. I think in the solar space as well, something can be borrowed from there because according to Gogla, I believe 75% of solar has been financed through off balance sheet, financing. So that is a huge, lesson to borrow from, especially where we are looking at growth in an industry where there is a lot of new players and new business models in terms of promoting cooking. And then, of course, the issue of VAT is something that, not just VAT, but I think a lot of the taxes around, for us being an IoT manufacturer, looking at tax incentives to make IoT cheaper. I believe that that is something that could be very helpful for us. I know even for people who are manufacturing cooking equipment, that could be something they are looking at. And just to say that, operating in the SEZs, for example, is also very expensive for a small business. So if you want to get into Tashu City, a piece of land there, an acre will cost you close to 100 million shillings. So you can imagine PowerPay wants to go there, but I have to buy land for 100 million shillings. And if I need to rent space there, it's 500,000 a month. So they are very, as much as these SEZs are there, they are not very friendly to enterprises that are not very large already. And for sure, being in the SEZ is good for us because we get tax incentives, we can save money, scale quickly. But entering is quite, a hard thing. So I think there's support needed around those types of things. So if tax won't be reduced, then operating in SEZs, providing maybe manufacturing facilities for people like us within those SEZs for some time as we grow would be very helpful. So those are some of the things I'd like to see in there. And I think there are very particular needs for different businesses. So I guess a lot of the other distributors and other players in the value chain, I'm sure they have a lot to add when it comes to real business needs. And I would like to see more of that in there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's some really points there about being able to provide an environment that enables small and large businesses to grow. And I think looking at the electric cooking sector now, we have different scales of businesses operating. We have very innovative young businesses like PowerPay, for example. We have larger, more established businesses like Burn, who are now manufacturing at scale, exporting to other countries. And then we have the major international corporations who are generally manufacturing in Asia and importing appliances in serious volumes and millions, if not billions, of dollars on of turnover. So creating a strategy that caters for all of these types of businesses and enables them to move up the ladder and grow their activities and grow the electric cooking sector at the same time is going to be absolutely key. So yeah, thank you for sharing those insights. Those are really important. Julius, did you want to come in and comment?
Maybe one or two things. One, the policy, for example, in our country should be very clear. E.g., we want to direct to see who actually signs for the authority, the letter of authority to sell the carbon credit. Two, according to the regulation, the current regulation, the community should earn 25%. So we would like us accurate to know about how that the distribution of that community, or 25% money for the community, how it goes. The other thing is about the tax. My friend has talked about the tax. Is it on net or is it on gross? You know, those are things that are not very clear to us. Maybe also another concern, it is about the carbon credit. The pricing policy is very volatile. You can't tell exactly about the cost of carbon credit. So it's very volatile, sometimes high, sometimes low. So those are some of the maybe the issues that we are trying to digest.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the volatility of the price, and I wonder, given that it is a government document, so referring specifically to the electric cooking strategy, then I wonder whether there is a role for government to play in aggregating demand and setting up deals, particularly through the government to government Article 6 framework, whereby they could guarantee a price for developers within a country who want to register a carbon project through that framework, a price that is not only more stable, but is perhaps more attractive than prices that you would get through the voluntary market right now. So I'm looking at the time and seeing that we should probably be wrapping up quite soon. There's a few questions here in the chat, so I just want to pick up on a few of these, and then if we can come back to each of our panelists for a closing thought of just 30 seconds, and then we'll try and finish on the half hour as planned. So I see a few comments from Aaron Leopold from Enegro, who is also running a private sector organization who is grappling with carbon markets. Aaron, did you want to unmute briefly and just explain some of your challenges? I see you very kindly answered some of Rocio's questions further above, but did you want to come in and perhaps voice some of your concerns, and particularly what could the electric cooking strategy do to address some of these?
Oh, thank you for unmuting me. Yes, thanks, John. So yeah, I have a couple of short points. One is more of a question, but to answer Rocio's point, I think that in order to look at how the community members can benefit over time, we have to look at who is engaging over time with those customers that can also benefit from this. And as most e-cooking companies are looking to sell something and then move on, it's important to figure out, okay, well, are there other beneficiaries in the value chain that are engaging with these customers over time? And the answer is, of course, that the power companies benefit quite substantially. And we've heard from some others that they are partnering with the national utility. Here in Uganda, where Enegro is operating, we have undertaken some work with the national utility to look at high quality, reliable energy corridors. And this is where we want to start with the electric cooking revolution, right? You don't want to start with customers that will be frustrated because they can't use their assets half the time. So it's also, however, a really fantastic incentive for the utilities to improve the quality of power in these areas, because if we can show them that our customers are using much more power than average, then they should be able to maintain the lines much better than in other areas. It doesn't always happen that way, obviously, but we have had some success with the national utility in Uganda because they are very keen to improve their rural revenues. So the other point, the question that I had is that FNRB, this is the fraction of non-renewable something, I've forgotten the exact thing, but basically, when you're looking at switching someone from cooking on a dirty biomass fuel, this calculation is about, well, how dirty is the electricity, right? And so if the electricity is as dirty as the biomass, then there's no carbon credits, right? And what we have, however, seen is that the calculations from the previous methodology, I have not looked at any revisions now, but the previous methodology, the calculations showed that the electricity that was being used was not really clean enough to make electric cooking attractive for carbon credits in Uganda. Now, I know that some companies are already issuing credits here in Uganda for electric cooking. So this is just a source of huge amount of confusion, basically. And I'm just curious if this has been clarified by anyone, because it's essential. It's the only way that getting this calculation correct is the only way that electric cooking can be seen as attractive. This calculation must be super accurate to show that, you know, the power coming from Uganda is hydro, therefore it is green, therefore it is better than biomass. But the calculation as it stood in December of last year said, actually, it's not that great. So it has prevented us from starting on the carbon journey, unfortunately. Does anyone know if this has been changed?
Is this the grid emission factor, the particular number that you're referring to?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember
Yes.
when we were doing some modeling here, then the number for Kenya seemed to be very out of date, and again, very kind of insinuating that the electricity mix was very dirty, when in fact it is very clean here through a diversified mix of renewables, not just hydro. What we did in the modeling that we did, which was not the same as having something that has to be certified by a body which then accredits the mitigation outcomes, but we simply picked another country that has a similar generation mix. I think we picked Iceland in the end because it just seemed unrealistic, the value that was on there on this database. And I feel like this is often a challenge with these big kind of records, because they have to be reviewed and verified and agreed internationally, etc. And by the time that happens, the figures are already out of date. So it is an ongoing challenge with both of those figures. And I would welcome responses from anyone else on the call who would like to comment on that, cognizant of the fact that we only have a couple of minutes left in a dialogue. So does anyone else want to chip in briefly on Aaron's question, specifically on whether it has been updated in Uganda? Okay, I think everyone's being very shy today. I know we do have a lot of carbon experts on the call here. I can see by looking at the participants, but yeah, maybe we'll have to take that one offline. So why don't we wrap up here? I'd like to give 30 seconds to each of the panelists to just make any closing remarks, and then we'll wrap up for today. So I think we haven't heard from Erastus for a while. So Prof. Erastus, would you like to give us 30 seconds just summarizing any of the key issues that have come out of this dialogue from your perspective?
Okay, thank you, John, and the rest. I want to thank you for the convening the meeting. Sorry for the background. I'm in the office and it's the aeroplanes passes over. So, well, I want to say that in terms of the clean cooking, I think we have a long way to go, and I would like to say that in terms of policy, I think we can use the newly launched Kenya National Cooking Transition Strategy, which will basically address the electrical cooking as part of e-cooking. And in terms of technology deployment, I think innovations is the key to success in this area of carbon credit. And I encourage especially the players to make use of technology, newer technology which are more efficient and in terms of what need to be claimed as carbon credit. And the importance of testing and verification is key to us as a government agency, because that is where we'll be able to make a difference. Over back to you.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. Maybe next, could we come to Julius? Yes, you're muted if you're talking.
Okay, thank you for having me. I'm looking that maybe we can have more. Maybe I can comment on one thing that it's good to have innovations, and also would like even to have a technological transfer to us, so that we can also maybe migrate to distribute e-cooking to our clients. Thank you.
Fantastic, yeah, and it's great to hear from what is for me a new partner who is willing to enter this space and join us on this electric cooking journey. So thank you for joining the dialogue today, and I hope that others on the call may reach out to you as a result of this, and I'd definitely be very happy to work with you to help find suitable partners that could help you enter into the electric space. Can we go next to? Sorry, can we go next to Meredith? And then last but not least, we'll come to Jeffrey. Meredith, over to you.
Yeah, I think this was a good discussion. Maybe just parting shot from me, even as we review or submit comments to the e-cooking strategy, I do believe our potential is beyond what's been highlighted or pointed at within that strategy at the 10%. It's much more than that, especially for Kenya, looking at how much grid penetration we have, the renewability of that factor. So even as we consider other transitions and paths going forward, just to think of it from a more resource-driven perspective and what would be the best use of our resources compared to importing fuels for people to cook with. I think this is one thing I strongly want to advocate for, and even as we think through it and drive the transition forward.
I could not agree more. Jeffrey. Are you still with us, Jeffrey?
Hi, John. Yeah, my network is in and out. Sorry. Yeah, so I think for me, I'd like to just say that it is important that we pursue digitalization. I think even on the things like grid emission factor, I think those are things that can be digitalized by utilities, and it's a number that can be accessed via an API. It can always be live somewhere where everybody can see based on how the generation mix is changing in real time. So I think that would be important to continuously, get digitalized through, various platforms. And also, just to add on the strategy as well, I think for me, it's very important that we are able to support businesses to grow and to scale. And so I think financing needs to be made available, and it needs to be, flexible enough for small businesses to leverage. I believe that unless that happens, then we will still have a market that is, very unequal, and some people will be outcompeted quickly out of the market and lost in oblivion. So we need to equalize the market through finance and even access to carbon finance, so that every distributor can actually benefit. Otherwise, those who benefit will also be subsidizing their products, while the others have no access to subsidy. And so they'll take forever to scale, or they'll just have to close shop. So I think carbon needs to be an enabler, and it needs to be available to everybody, so that the market is an equal playing field.
I totally agree, and I think that's a key role for a government strategy, which is aiming to support the growth of a sector, to ensure that there's a diversified mix of players, and that there are equal opportunities for all to start playing this carbon game. Because if it's only a few that can, then it's those that will thrive, and others that will go out of business as a result. So I think that's something we really want to bear in mind as we look through the strategy itself, and ensure that what we're doing is creating the environment in which a sustainable marketplace for electric cooking products can thrive, where we have a diversity of players and we can all move forward together, and ultimately offer a much greater choice of solutions which are affordable, reliable, convenient, etc. to consumers. And speaking to mirror this point, yes, 10% seems like a very small number. There's no reason why we can't go above that, though, especially if we can look to encourage people to cook in the off-peak hours. I think that's where the concern is for the utility and for the government, that if everyone starts cooking during dinner time and then it coincides with the evening peak. But if we can work together to develop electricity pricing mechanisms, which can encourage people to cook, especially breakfast and lunch with electricity, and maybe utilize other fuels for dinner, then it's a win-win situation for the utility, for the government, and for consumers. So I think on that note, we should draw it to a close. I want to say a big thank you to everyone who has made it to this point in the dialogue. We still have 72 people, including bots, of which we have quite a high proportion these days. Many apologies for the technical difficulties we experienced earlier in the call, and thank you for sticking with us. And a big thank you to CIPROS for bringing us together and convening another iteration of the Electric Cooking Community of Practice Dialogues. So thank you, everyone, and I look forward to seeing you at the next dialogue next month. Have a great afternoon, morning, or evening, wherever you may be. Goodbye.